Hello everyone, this is Miss Salma and today's lesson is clauses and phrases. So clauses versus phrases. What are these? That's what we're gonna be introduced to in today's lesson. Let's start. All right, so first thing, what is a clause? And how many types of clauses do we have? First, a clause is group of words that have a subject and a verb. So it's a must in any clause, any type of clause, it's a must that both of them have subject and a verb. All right. Like he decided to buy the house. Here, where is the subject, the doer of the action? It's he. And decided is the verb. To buy the house is the predicate or the rest of the sentence object. All right, so any clause in the world, we know and we can identify a clause that it has subject and verb. So clause means it has subject and verb. There are then two types of clauses. We're gonna get to know this in details later. But before we know what are the types of clauses, let me introduce you to what is next, which is a phrase. What is a phrase? A phrase is a group of words that don't have a subject and a verb. It's a phrase that doesn't have subject and verb. I mean, group of words that don't have subject and verb. Like in the morning. In the morning, does it have any subject or person doing any actions? No. In preposition, the article morning is just a noun. So it's just about time. It doesn't give me any thought. It's just, it tells me when something happened. In the morning, I went to school, for example. All right. This phrase tells us when something will happen or when something usually happens, but there isn't a subject, a person, or a thing, and there isn't a verb describing activity or existence. Here is how to fix it. I go to school in the morning. All right, next. Phrases are very important in English because they provide necessary information. For example, the children are playing in the sand. Which which part of this sentence is the phrase the children are playing in the sand? The children are playing till here. It's a clause. It has subject, children are playing. The children are playing. What's more than that, in the sand, it's a prepositional phrase. What's prepositional phrase? It's a phrase, group of words that don't have subject and verb, and it starts with a preposition. That's why we called it a prepositional phrase. Like we took before, adverbial phrase, very quickly. Also, like in the morning, it's a prepositional adverbial phrase of time, and so on. Moving on. So in the sand is the phrase. What about this one? Which part of this sentence is the phrase? The table in the dining room is very long. The table in the dining room is very long. Mhm. Is it the table or in the dining room or is very long? Let's see. Well, hmm, if you say it's in the dining room, then you are correct. Why? Because if I erase it, I'm going to say the table is very long. This means I'm actually pointing at a table. This table or that table is very long. Wow. But here it's adding essential information. This prepositional phrase is adding essential information or just some extra information to the sentence. I went back home after a good day. I went back home after a good day. Where is the phrase that tells me when something happened? It's right here. After a good day. Perfect. We played football after school. After school. The teacher was impressed with my assignment. The teacher was impressed. I can stop here. It's a clause. The teacher is the subject. Was impressed is the verb. With my assignment is a phrase. The bus brought us to school on time. So the bus is the subject, brought is the verb, us is the object, and to school and on time, both of them are phrases. All right. There was mud everywhere, on the carpet, on the chairs, and on my shoes. These are all phrases: on the carpet, on the chairs, and on my shoes. So now we know for uh, like by heart that clauses are a group of words that include, they have to include subject and verb, but there are types, remember? And the phrase is group of words that can't include subject or verb or both. It might have a person, but it won't have a verb doing the action. It might have an action word, but it won't have the person doing the action. All right. So, types of clauses. What are the types of clauses do we guys have? We have two types. The first one is called independent. Independent clauses are very strong. They are independent. They don't depend on any other clauses, only themselves. They're very independent. They don't need anything else around them. Independent clauses or also main clauses. Wait, there is a typo here. Let me. All right, types of clauses. I'm sorry, independent clause or main clause. Again, it has two names, either main or independent. Strong. It doesn't need any other clauses around to stand alone. There are features to know the independent clauses, but before we get into the features, let's know the second type, which is dependent clauses. Dependent is actually the opposite of independent. Independent means you're strong, you don't need anyone around, you can take care of yourself, you can stand alone. But the dependents are a little bit weak, they need help. They seek help from the independent clauses. So these ones, they depend on the independent clauses. They can't stand alone, weak. They don't make sense when they're alone, the dependent clauses, I mean. Another name for them is subordinate clause. Let's see the differences. Independent clause or main clause. It's a clause, and we agreed any clause, either independent or dependent, they must have subject and a verb. And what's more than that, it can stand alone on its own, independent, serving as a complete sentence, gives a complete thought, and it might serve as a complete sentence with no other sentence around. Example, I go to school every day. I go to school every day is a clause. It's an independent clause. How did I know it's a clause? Because it has subject and verb. How did I know it's independent? Because it can stand on its own, it can stand alone, and it gives complete thought. Is there anything um, not clear in the sentence? No, I go to school every day. Makes perfect sense on its own. Nothing is needed more. You can add actually more, but you don't have to. What are dependent clauses or subordinate clauses? They are also clauses which we agreed before, they must have subject and a verb, but it cannot, that's the difference. It cannot stand on its own, it can't stand alone, and it needs an independent clause. It does not give any complete thought on its own. Example, I'm gonna write an independent clause here, like my mom had to go to work. And this example was said by Kareem today in the class. Thanks, Kimo. All right. And here I'm gonna write because she has so much work to do. Because she has so much work to do. This is a clause. I have, how did I know it's a clause? I have subject, I have verb. So much work to do is just the rest of the sentence. She has so much work to do. But can I just say, because she has so much work to do, full stop? Is this a complete sentence? If you don't know about this part if you don't know about this clause? Because she has so much to do, so much work to do. What is this? What happened? What are you trying to tell me? Or for example, when I tell you, after I go home from school. What is that? After I go home from school, what do you do after you go home from school? So it's dependent because it needs, as we mentioned, an independent clause um, to understand its meaning. So the dependent clause depends on the independent in order to understand their meaning. For example, I do my homework after I go home from school, right? So I do my homework. It's independent clause that can stand alone. It has subject and verb and it serves as a complete sentence. However, after I go home from school is called an independent clause. It does have subject and verb because it's a clause, but it cannot stand on its own. It doesn't give a complete thought and it definitely needs an independent clause to like lean on. It's dependent, you know. It can depend on itself. Still young. All right. I took the umbrella because it was raining. Here, it's one sentence, but it's made up of two clauses. This is one sentence made up of two clauses. I took the umbrella. The second clause is because it was raining. Which one of these is independent? Which one of these is dependent? I took the umbrella. Can I say, I took the umbrella, full stop? Yes, definitely I can. But if I want to add extra information, I would say why I took it. But I can just simply say I took it and no, and don't give a reason. But here, when I said because it was raining, here I'm adding extra information, and it's actually I'm giving it in a form of um, dependent clause. I'm giving it in the form of a dependent clause. Excuse my handwriting. All right. So these are two clauses, but one sentence. I took the umbrella is an independent clause because it was raining is the dependent clause. All right. It was raining. I took my umbrella. These are two independent clauses. They are independent clauses because each one would be a good sentence on its own. Each one is a complete thought. It was raining, full stop. Makes perfect sense. I took my umbrella, full stop. Makes perfect sense. So I can join, as we said before, when I said I took my umbrella because it was raining, I can join clauses in two ways. I can join clauses using coordinating conjunctions or the fanboys, which you guys already know, for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. Or I also have some other conjunctions called subordinating conjunctions. Fanboys, these are the most important coordinating conjunctions. Well, this is not really our focus here. Our focus is going to be on the subordinating conjunctions. But before we jump into this, I just want to tell you that in order to join or use coordinating conjunctions, I need to have two independent clauses. I need to have two independent clauses. Like, I like pizza, comma, but my sister likes burger. These are two independent clauses connected using fanboys but. However, for, and, nor, but, or, yet, and so. All right, we already know them. We took their functions many times in the classroom. For means it's because, guys, you will have this on LMS. It explains everything. All right, so to sum up, coordinating conjunctions join independent clauses, two independent clauses. Each clause must be a complete thought, which could be a sentence on its own. For example, Um, uh, I had to uh, I had to stay at home today. For I was sick. For I was sick. For is a coordinating conjunction used uh, instead of because here. It means because. All right. Subordinating conjunctions, and this is our focus here. But before we get to subordinating conjunctions, I want to give you something called um, types of sentences before we get to know the conjunctions. So, types of sentences. Let me explain this to you. How many types of sentences do we guys have in English? We have number one, simple sentence. We have number two, compound sentences. Number three, complex sentences. Number four, wow, it's compound complex sentences. What are compound complex sentences? Wow, they look pretty difficult. They're not. All right, let's discuss each and every type on its own. And this is called types of sentences. Simple sentence. Let's take simple sentence, the first one. Simple sentence is equal to just one clause. Any clause? No, one independent clause, not just any clause, right? One independent clause can be or can make up a simple sentence. Example for this is he works really hard. He works really hard is a clause, it's an independent clause, and if I start it, I start with it, and then at the end put a full stop, no commas or anything, then it's just one sentence, one simple sentence. All right, it's so easy. So one simple sentence equal one independent clause, or one independent clause might form one simple sentence, stand on its own. It's called simple sentence. Number two, compound sentences. We know them, and we use coordinating conjunctions as we just discussed them to link them. What do you think they're going to be? Coordinating conjunctions link what? Two independent clauses. Very good. So compound sentence is equal to two or more independent clauses joined using a coordinating conjunction. All right, I hope this is clear. When I give you an example, it will be even clearer. Example. For example, let's use Tom. Tom works really hard, but his brother, John, is lazy. Here, Tom works really hard is one independent clause. His brother, John, is lazy is, or let's just say John, and remove but. Full stop, John is lazy. I am going to connect these two sentences using but. So independent clause, put a comma, use but, then the other independent clause. All right, so here I had two independent clauses. I had two independent clauses and I joined them using a comma and a coordinating conjunction, or one of the fanboys, but. Tom works really hard, John is lazy, so I'm using here comma and but to join them together. This is compound sentence. Two or more independent clauses joined using a coordinating conjunction. My bad, coordinating conjunction. Number three, which is really important, and it's why we're taking all of these introduction, is the complex clauses. Complex sentences. What do you think they are? If simple sentence is one independent and compound is two independent, what do you think complex is gonna be? I'm just giving you some time to think. All right. If you're thinking that it's one independent plus one or more dependent, then you're definitely correct. Great job. All right. So complex sentences are made up of one independent clause plus one or more dependent clauses. Example. How do I know an independent clause? A dependent clause. Like when I say, because I was traveling, because I was traveling, because I was traveling. It's a dependent clause, right? It's a dependent clause that can't stand on its own, but it does have subject and verb because it's a clause, you know? But it can't stand on its own. So I need another independent clause. Because I was traveling, I couldn't go to school. Because I was traveling, comma, I couldn't go to school. I can also write I could not go to school because I was traveling. All right. I hope so far everything is clear. So to sum up again, simple sentences, there is just one independent clause standing on its own. Compound sentences are two or more independent clauses joined together using and, but, for, so, I woke up late, so I missed the bus. And complex sentences is one independent and one or more dependent. One main and one or more subordinate. Okay, because I was traveling, I could not go to school, or I couldn't go to school because I was traveling. Also, when I tell you, after I had lunch, after I had lunch, should be in past perfect. After I had lunch, can I put a full stop and that would be my sentence? Of course not. It doesn't make any sense. It's not clear. I need the rest of it because it's dependent. I need an independent to join it. After I had lunch, I watched TV. So I had lunch, then I watched TV, right? So after I had lunch or I had eaten lunch, I watched TV. Perfect. All right. So let's agree on this before we move on, like taking any further information. We said here we have a phrase, and here we said we have subject plus verb. We also have stand alone and complete thought. I don't want you to forget. All right. And then we have dependent clause. And here at the very end, we have independent or main clause. So the phrase, a question, does it have subject and verb? Yes or no? No. Can it stand alone? Can I just say in the morning, full stop? Stand alone as a sentence? Nope, never. Does it give a complete thought? In my room? Is this a complete thought? Nope, it's not. What about dependent clauses? Any clause, we said it must have subject and verb. So yes. But can it stand alone after I went back from school? After I went home? No, it does not stand alone and it does not give a complete thought. It needs an independent clause, as we agreed, to give its meaning. All right, What about independent clause? Does it have subject and verb? Yes. Can it stand alone? Yes, it's independent. Does it give a complete thought? Yes, and it serves as a simple sentence. It's considered as one simple sentence. All right. And that was it. That was it for today's lesson. That was just a wrap up for everything. We agreed that phrases are a group of words with no subject and verb. They can't stand alone. They don't have complete thought, or they don't give complete thought or idea. They're missing. Dependent clauses are a group of words that must include subject and verb, but they can't stand alone and they don't give complete thought. Independent clauses, they're very strong, they're the strongest. They have subject and verb, such as any clause. They can stand alone, they give complete thought because they can form simply a simple sentence. Okay. We also took types of sentences. We have simple, which is just one independent clause, is a simple sentence. If I want to make my writing even look better, I can use compound complex and compound complex types of sentences. How do I use them? We said the compound is when I join two or more independent clauses using coordinating conjunction. What are the coordinating conjunctions? Are the fanboys, and we said for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. These are the fanboys. When I use them, I know for sure it's a compound sentence with two independent clauses joined together. What about complex sentence, the core of our lesson? It's when I have one independent and one or more than one dependent clauses in the sentence. After I had eaten lunch, I watched TV. I watched TV after I had eaten lunch. Um, I hope this was easy and beneficial. There's also one last note that I guys really want to tell you about is that if you have noticed, usually the dependent clause start with a word like after, because, before, when, since. I didn't go to school since I was traveling. I bought a book while my mom was drinking her coffee. I bought a book while my mom drank her coffee, for example. I bought a book while my mom drank her coffee. So I bought a book is independent, and while my mom drank her coffee is dependent. Again, I bought a book is independent, and while my mom drank her coffee is dependent. How do I spot and identify a, a dependent clause? This is the last thing. How to identify a dependent clause? Well, how do you think? Dependent or subordinate clauses must start with subordinating conjunction. Oh, miss, this is where we stopped in the PowerPoint. Yes, this is where we stopped. I'm sorry, conjunction. Why am I saying things that I'm not writing? All right. Dependent clauses must start with subordinating conjunctions, which are also called subordinators, such as, let's take a look. Let's take a look here. Subordinating conjunctions. It's a subordinating conjunction is a word which joins together a dependent clause and an independent clause. Because it was raining, I took my umbrella. Although it was hot, he was wearing a coat. He was wearing a coat although it was hot. So here, although it was hot, where is the dependent? Can I say although it was hot and put full stop? No, I can't. So definitely this is the dependent. This is the subordinate. This is the subordinate. All right, so if this is the subordinate or the dependent, then for sure he was wearing a coat is the independent. How did I know this is the dependent? It starts with a subordinating conjunction, although. Another example, it's the same. He was wearing a coat although it was hot. It's almost the same example, except there is one difference. What it is? Yep, as you're saying, it's the comma. What's the comma doing here? Although it was hot, he was wearing a coat. He was wearing a coat although it was hot. Let me give you another example. Because it was raining, comma, I took the umbrella. The same example, but without a comma. And I want you guys to try to think, why am I using commas in these two examples and not using them here? Why do you think? There is something common between these two examples. I started with something that made me put a comma, but here I did not start with it. If you're saying that when we start with the dependent clause, comma, I have to separate the clauses using a comma, which I just did, by the way, in this sentence I wrote. Exactly. You're right if you're thinking this way. Again, when we start with the dependent clause, when we start our sentence with the dependent clause, I have to separate the clauses using a comma. What if I started with the independent? No. If I started with the independent, I don't use any commas. He was wearing a coat. See, I'm not using any commas here, although it was hot. I will upload also a sheet with all subordinating conjunctions, the mostly used and the common ones. They're right here. And what's the function of each? Although, even though, whereas, and while, they express contrast between ideas. Because, as, and since, they show cause, effect, and relationship between ideas. And this takes us to types of sentences, which we just discussed. Simple sentence, compound, complex, and compound complex, but we're not getting into compound complex now. Simple sentences, structure contains one independent clause, just one main clause, no dependent clauses, or even it's just one independent, not even two independent, because two independent is compound. Great, I started on time, but I arrived late. I will accept your offer or I will decline it. Complex sentences are one independent and one dependent. Although it was raining heavily, I went to the club. I met Ali, who has just moved to our neighboring. Also, if you could take a look at this example here, it starts with a relative pronoun and not a. All right, I met Ali, who has just moved to our neighboring. Here, who is a relative pronoun, and also relative pronoun clauses or relative clauses are called dependent. Like who has just moved to our neighboring. This is a dependent clause. And actually, there isn't supposed to be a comma here. I met Ali, who has just moved to our neighboring. Okay, great. So this was it for our lesson. Types of sentences, subordinating conjunctions, coordinating conjunctions, as well as the difference between clauses and phrases. I hope this was beneficial, and I hope you guys understand the lesson. And please, if you have any comments or questions, you can send them to me. Thank you. Good day. Have a good day. Bye-bye.